Thank y'all for coming. Again, I'm Caitlin. I thought I would just kind of talk to you guys more from like the sales side of things. So I know a lot of times being in new construction can seem kind of overwhelming, especially if you have a buyer. If you take the buyer to a builder, a lot of times they're going to have 10, 15, sometimes 20 different floor plans. So it's just really important if you want to kind of sit down with them first. I have found it's always productive to kind of have a little sit down meeting with people beforehand and really just kind of narrow down like what are they looking for in a house between wants and needs. With new construction, I know a lot of people think, I'm going to build a house, I'm going to get exactly what I want, it's going to be perfect. I would love to tell you that there's a perfect house, but unfortunately, even if you build it, 9 times out of 10, it's probably still not the perfect house for them. So really sitting down with people and trying to figure out, okay, what is your family looking for? What do you guys need? Do you need an entertainment space? Do you need 4 bedrooms? Do we have to have 5 bedrooms? And that way, that allows you as their agent to really kind of filter out a lot of those floor plans before we even reach the builder side of things. So you can sit down and instead of somebody pulling out 15 different floor plans for them to look at, you've kind of already narrowed it down. You can give the sales rep or the side agent a heads up and say, hey, here's really kind of like the top 3 or 4 that we're looking at, just so it doesn't feel as overwhelming for them. And then really just kind of narrow it down from there. Also a big thing too, figure out a lot of their structural options that they're interested in. So I know Troy's gonna kind of point out a lot of stuff in the house for us. I'll kind of chime in here and there, just telling people, you know, hey, that's structural. So if somebody says, you know, I have to have 5 bedrooms, but I have to have hardwood floors throughout, and the kitchen has to have a backsplash, a lot of times too, there are plenty of things that people can come back after the fact and do. So if people are very budget conscious or want to stay within a certain monthly payment, maybe it's best to have that conversation up front with them of, guys, we can always have somebody come in after the fact and put a backsplash up in your kitchen. But if you want 9-foot ceilings on the first floor, we cannot come back and take the second floor of your house off and raise your house up to 9 feet. So just trying to get an idea up front of what people are looking for, just to let them know, let's try to check as many boxes as we can up front while we're focusing on structural options, whether that is the footprint of the house, whether that is bedrooms, bathrooms, or even plumbing options as well. That is what I have always found to kind of be more helpful, just in terms of trying to kind of take away some of that overwhelming feeling for folks.
And guys, as Caitlin mentioned, my goal today is to help show y'all some of my lingo, so to speak, my scribble scrabble on the walls of what is called a frame check. That way, if your customers are walking house and they're saying, hey, you know, I saw this written on the floor, what does this mean? There are certain points that I've written that'll help my vendors, you know, HVAC guys, plumbing guys, etc. I think you all having that information will help answer a lot of questions for folks. And to touch on Caitlin's point of figuring out kind of what those folks want before we start building is key. You know, I get a set of plans, they're called red lines. They're from the county. That is my Bible during the build. You know, I can't alter a space but so much or the county's gonna pop me on it and I'll have to get it re-inspected, etc. Especially working with bigger builders, you know, like a RCI. We don't allow changes after we start. I know there's some custom builders who do allow changes here and there from time to time. But if it's from a structural standpoint, the county's going to want to amend the permits, which in turn is a delay, a long process behind it. So as she mentioned, those structural things are very important to get kind of squared away up front, because those are the things that are really going to cause issues to change after the fact. Diving into some construction related things. In the kitchen here, as you can see, I've got my cabinets laid out. It's a lot of different verbiage on the floor, more so labeling what kind of base cabinets, etc. But this will give your folks a good opportunity to kind of stand in, you know, I'm standing at my island. Here's where a bar stool will sit. You know, it'll give them an opportunity to talk about electrical from outlets. Do I want an outlet on the side of my island? So we get this laid out at this pre-drywall stage. This is a very crucial point, just because in the next couple weeks, you're not going to see any of this stuff because I'm going to have sheetrock and insulation up. So I definitely encourage your folks to come in, take a video of the house, see where plumbing pipes are currently, see where electrical wires may be. That way, come hanging pictures during, you know, once they close, we don't get phone calls saying, I got water on my floor, we don't know where it's coming from. So I definitely push folks to do videos and stuff like that. But just to point out a couple of things that I've written on the floor, again, just to help down the road. And a lot of this stuff, guys, is elementary, and I'm sure a lot of y'all are aware of it. But for example, we've got PEX Plumbing here. You've got red, which is obviously going to indicate the hot line. You've got the other line, which indicate cold. So this will be our kitchen sink. So we've got hot and cold lines coming in, and this will be our drain, sewer line, okay? So that'll connect into a main sewer pipe in the crawl space, hit the main sewer line itself. In our case, we're on a drain field here, so it will go to the drain field. You get into some public county water, county sewer communities, of course, that will go to the street and get sent to a treatment plant. In this particular neighborhood, with us being on a well and septic is basically an on-site sewer treatment plant. Not to go into the weeds too much of that stuff, I know those are big questions for folks, especially the customers that I've experienced who've kind of lived in the city their whole life. They have no idea what a well and septic is. It's concerning to folks who don't know what it is. The best example I can give, me as the builder, I don't say, hey, we're gonna put an alternative system back here. The health department will come out, take soil tests of the ground, determine what kind of soil we have, which in turn tells us, health department tells us, hey, an alternative system or a conventional system will work here. So us as the builder don't determine what kind of system we put in. You hear me talking on conventional or alternative. Conventional is your plain Jane, soil's good, soil filters water well. That'll be treatment level 1, which is a TL1 you'll see on health reports and all that good stuff. That'll be conventional. Where we start getting into our clay, our less draining soil, is where we'll have the alternative systems come into play. My best recommendation to tell folks that are uneasy on it is, it's number one, there's no cost associated with it. You know, you don't have a county sewer bill, you don't have a county water bill, any of that good stuff. It's obviously on site, and a lot of these systems that are more detailed, guys, have alarms on them. So, and it's almost to the point of an annoyance of how much notification you get from those systems. You know, if the water level gets too high, an alarm's gonna go off. So they're very regulated, and that's a health department rule, not necessarily a builder rule as well. So that's a lot of feedback I hear from folks that are coming from Northern Virginia or whatever it may be. They're scared of well and septics. Jumping to the well side of things, every area is different. You know, people ask me, what kind of well am I going to get? Well, in this subdivision is a great example of it. I could dig a well here and get 5 gallons a minute, and I could go across the street and dig a well and get 20 gallons a minute. You know, water in this particular area runs in bands, so in strings, so to speak, underground. When we hit that aquifer, that's how we know we've got water. Each area is different as far as depth of water. Everyone thinks the deeper the well, the better. That means I have more water. That's not the case. Our goal is going down, hitting that aquifer, and it's not like the TV shows where you hit that aquifer and water blows out the ground like the oil rigs. What we're looking for digging a well is finding that material that water works with, if that makes sense. So that gravel, the sand, all those type of sediments are gonna be around water. In here, we're hitting water 45 to 60 foot range, okay? So it sounds very shallow, but in all reality, that's where the aquifer is. So, and again, you have some neighborhoods, you know, Rock Creek, you dig a well in 300 foot in the ground. So it's crazy how it works, but just tell your folks that it's not how deep it is. That doesn't determine how much water you have or any of that stuff as well, okay? I know I went down a rabbit hole with well and septic stuff. I just feel that that's a big question for folks who are kind of uneasy about that, so I figured I'd touch on that. But jumping back, you go ahead.
Really quickly, guys, I'm sorry. Just from the sales side of it, a lot of times I'll have people ask me, especially if they're unfamiliar with the well, well, how do we know that it's safe to drink? Or how do we know that it's going to be enough for our family afford to live there? Like, just remind them that that is not necessarily just a builder coming in, putting a well and being like, okay, good luck, you're kind of on your own. You know, the county still has to come out, the county still tests the water, make sure it's free of bacteria, and gives you an actual report that the builder has to provide the buyers saying, yes, it is free of bacteria, yes, it is safe to drink, and yes, you are hitting the specific gallons per minute required by that county to make sure that your family of 3, 4, 5 is gonna have enough water to be able to have somebody taking a bath or to be able to fill up the sink, run the dishwasher, or anything like that. So it's not something where the builder just installs it and basically says, okay, good luck, you're on your own.
And as she mentioned, that what she's referencing is called an OP, occupational permit. So me as the builder, I have to provide that to Hanover County in our case. Hey, we've passed a water sample here. We've done a well completion report, all these documents to then receive my OP from Hanover County, which in turn allows me to get my CO, which is a certificate of occupancy. So a lot of that stuff is us as the builders is following their rules. It's not the builder saying, I'm gonna put this system in because it's cheaper and more, cost effective, if that makes sense. We wish they would pick the cheaper systems from time to time, but that's not always the case. Okay, do y'all have any questions on well and septic stuff before I kind of dive into the inside of the house?
Do you ever put filters on them?
We do, so, and that's, again, area based. So in here we have a filter. What I like to tell folks from a filter standpoint is a lot of it is preference, right? Because when I'm turning that house over to the customers, I know it's safe. I know you're not going to get sick from drinking the water. So it's what you've grown up in. I grew up in Hanover my whole life. I've drank out of a well my entire life. I'm used to well water. Folks coming from Northern Virginia may not be used to that taste, so they think it's hard water or got a sulfur taste or whatever it may be. The best example I can give is if you take a water bottle and shake it, you notice all the bubbles and stuff floating around. That's exactly your well. Your well is exactly that. So in the beginning, when your folks move in, the water's going to taste completely different than once the house has been used 3 months and those bubbles, so to speak, in a 40, 60-foot well settle, which takes months and times to do. So before they go spending money on a water treatment system or a specialized well filter, I would recommend, hey guys, let that well settle a little bit. And then if it's still not to their preference, by all means, do it. But in our case, we put in a well here just because we're in a sandy area. So we want to keep a lot of that sediment out of the plumbing pipes, which in turn will clog shower heads, sinks down the road, stuff like that. Okay. Any other questions you guys may have for me on that stuff? Cool. Do you have anything on that? I'm gonna dive into kitchen. Just again, kitchen is a very hot spot for folks. As you can see, guys, what we've got in here is just some duct work for microwave hood. A lot of folks ask what that is. So right now, we've done the rough end of our HVAC. HVAC guys is who installed this, okay? When I put my hood in, and when I say hood, I'm referencing the exhaust fan over top of the stove. We'll drill a hole through this and vent it. This vent is vented outside the house. A lot of people ask what that may be. Right now it looks like nothing, but once we tie into it, there's a pipe running out the house. All that exhaust will shoot out. Down here, you'll notice this here, gas line for obviously their range that'll slide in there. So that is what the house will look like with that. You can see that I've wrote gas vent to exterior. So I'll do that more so for my guys in the field so they know, hey, we've got a gas fixture here, not electric. I've written several scribble scrabble areas around the house. Let's go to this doorway here if you don't mind. So looking at this guy here, you'll notice, and I don't know if everyone can see kind of my writing here or not. So here I've got 4O DBL X and then an arrow. So what that stands for is 4-foot door, okay? A lot of people bring this up. So we will frame this opening 2 inches bigger than 4 foot. So right now, if you took this measurement, it would be 4'2". The reasoning behind that is it gives us some wiggle room to adjust it, shim it if we need to, as well as allow space for trim and casing around it. So that covers the 4 foot. DBL stands for double. So it's a double door opening like this. The X is the hinge, so hinge side. So you'll have door on hinge here, and then the arrow shows you which way the door is swinging. Okay, so a lot of folks will ask, well, which way is my doorway swinging when they want to place an outlet in the house? So this is why I do this, so folks know exactly which way the door is swinging. Obviously, this is a double door. Where it's a single door, we'll have it written on one side of the doorway, and that shows you, okay, hinge will be on this side, door swinging in. We don't want to put an outlet behind the door, put it that way. Okay?
Keep in mind too, the majority of the builders are also going to give you what's called an electrical walk, or a lot of times they'll call it a pre-drywall walk, and that that is gonna be essentially where you come through with the electrician. A lot of times there will also be a low voltage rep if you want speakers, anything like that. And then that is actually kind of goes back to Troy's point earlier. Once you guys have kind of narrowed down exactly where the outlets are gonna be, let's say that they do want a TV above the fireplace. It's kind of like the best example that I can give. Typically, you're not going to have an electrical outlet that comes standard above the fireplace because they're typically kind of given closer to the ground per code of every 6 feet. Every 6 feet on the walls there. So little things like that are also something that you're going to try to want to give your buyers a heads up on. Of guys, once we kind of get through the plans phase, our next goal in mind, other than design, let's kind of start thinking where we want the furniture to go now that we know which bedrooms, family rooms, living rooms that we have. So that way when we do come for the electrical wall, that's not the first time that they have started thinking about, okay, do I want my couch to face the fireplace? Do we want it to face a different wall? Where are we gonna have it? It just makes that appointment a lot more efficient for you guys and for your clients as well.
And as she mentioned, this home right now, we are ready for the electric walk. I have the electrical walkthrough with the customer tomorrow here, okay? So at the electrical walk, what's gonna be done? Plumbing's gonna be done. HVAC roughing, I wish the HVAC was all the way done because we wouldn't be sitting here shivering right now. But HVAC roughing is complete, gas is complete, okay, which is all the plump lines that you see ran. So now we are ready for electrical. We do electrical last because a wire has a lot more ability to move than a plumbing pipe. So I let my guys get the big stuff in first and they can work the wires around the plumbing, if that makes sense. If they ask you why plumbing's going before electrical. Again, a lot easier to maneuver those wires through studs and joists around stuff than a 2-inch plumbing line, okay? To touch on the electric walk, you'll notice I've had my electricians come in, lay out the floor as to what comes standard, okay? So my standard set of plans will show, you know, 1 light per room, 7 recess cans throughout. The R's on the floor is obviously showing a recess can, so that comes standard. When we do that electric walk tomorrow, we give the customers that opportunity to say, hey, I maybe don't want a recess can here, I want to slide it down. What I do is I have marked the base layout of what comes with it, and of course, at that electric walk, folks can determine, you know, I want more recess cans or I want additional outlets. So everything here is laid out per code. As she mentioned, outlets do come. So the R's on the wall here, that stands for receptacle. Okay, so my electricians have laid it out per code. Those outlets you'll notice on the walls as well, behind you there. So those outlets are measured by footage, as she mentioned. So it's 6 foot from a break and then 12 foot on a straight flat wall, okay? We have to have those outlets. So what I like to tell folks, because it is an overwhelming thing for your customers to think about an electric walk with so many things, I like to focus on specialty outlets. You know, do you have an electric car and need a car charger? Do you need a specialty outlet for a piece of furniture? And that tends to help with a lot of, you know, getting worked up about where all this stuff is going to go. You know, it's not every individual outlet they have to pick out. It's more so the additional extra add-ons, okay? I know we've had our fair share of long, fun electrical walkthroughs. And again, I get it. It's someone who's not in this field, and even, you know, me doing it, it's an overwhelming process for sure. It's a lot of information. Touching on the TV locations, all that good stuff up front to give your buyers the time to lay it all out and think about it before we get here and you have 3 guys staring at you saying, what do you want to do in this wall? It's a heck of a lot easier to prepare for it over the time of their build versus a day before, if that makes sense. Okay? Anything on that, you think? Cool. Well, guys, if we will, I'm going to direct us to the fireplace here, and I've made a couple notes, and obviously, this is per house. Again, I wish the fireplace worked as well as this face, but I've made a couple of notes here, so you'll see I've said add plywood to ceiling. Okay, this particular house is getting a stone fireplace. Okay, so that's a lot of my notes. Reason I have to add plywood here is because the stone, you can't adhere it to drywall, if that makes sense. So I'll start the sheetrock here, and then I'll have plywood going up. We haven't done it yet. Obviously, we have to have insulation installed first, and then we'll run that sheetrock or the plywood up. So again, I'm just pointing out notes that I've made that your folks may ask you, hey, what does this mean, or what is that? So again, this is a per house kind of deal with this writing, but I figured it'd be a good point to talk about. Okay, and I know Caitlin can touch on kind of the option from adding stone versus, as she mentioned, it's one of those things that this here is probably an important thing to maybe do up front, just because the amount of work that's needed after the fact to make it. So.
Yeah, and I would say too, guys, I mean, one tip, like if you're not super familiar with new construction, I would bet money that if you reach out to, whether it's one of us at RCI, you're welcome to call me and ask me a couple questions, or let's say that you're going with a different builder. I mean, I would imagine that whoever the sales rep or site agent is that you're working with is not going to be upset if you call them and you say, hey, look, I'm trying to be really proactive with things. I'm trying to keep our appointments very efficient for you guys and for us. Can you give me a heads up on some of the most common items that people typically get stuck on? So I'm gonna go ahead and have that conversation up front with my buyers to try to eliminate a lot of that confusion and to try to have that conversation up front. So when you do show up for your electrical walk, it's not a shock to them. Now they're completely thrown off because they had no idea that was something that they had to fix the day of. I would just be very surprised if somebody's gonna have a hard time with that. So the more that you can try to prepare them up front and start having those conversations with, it's just gonna make everybody's lives a lot easier, and it will also make your clients a lot happier because they know this is something that is important. Here's why we have to add the stone or the brick up front, because it can be some structural options on the back. That's not as easy, I say easy, I would be careful in applying backsplash, but like that's not as easy as having somebody come in and put a backsplash up on the kitchen wall.
And as she mentioned, like, bounce these questions, I'm happy to answer the phone and talk about things. I know, when Caitlin was in Hickory Hill, we talked all the time about, hey, what do you think about this? When should we do it? And that's the best cost-effective way to give your clients what they want, but still stay within reason of their price point as well. Okay? Do y'all have any questions on stuff like that, referencing additions, add-ons, anything of that nature? Okay, cool.
Also, one thing, on the resale side of things, when people want to renovate a bathroom upstairs, just notice in between these joists, it's not simple to move the plumbing around without tearing out the ceiling and everything else. And if people want to do these things, I mean, there's a giant cost associated with moves up around and renovating, especially moving plumbing or anything like that. It's more of a pain than you think it is. Just it's not as simple.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned, these guys that you see in the ceiling are called I-joists. They are structural. It's an engineered product that is designed to carry loads and a lot smarter engineer type loads than I'm aware of. I just get told where to put it, of course. But I know from drilling a hole through them, it's 2 inches is the max you can drill through and stuff like that. So it's not just as simple as, oh, well, I'm just going to drill a hole through that and run another pipe to make a new sink. You can't do that from a structural standpoint as well. So there's a lot in it. I left this unfixed, and I'm sorry to be bouncing around the house, but I think it's good for y'all to see. There's a joist right here that we had to cut through, okay? In this particular case, the toilet drain fell directly on an I-joist. So you see how I told my guys to cut around it? This will not pass by code, okay? What we can do is called head it off. And I know I'm getting into the weeds a little bit. I just know when my customers have seen things cut, it tends to add a little bit of animosity to the situation. Why is this cut? There is ways around it. So obviously this joist will not pass code currently. What we'll do is I'll take a picture, send this to my engineer and say, hey, this is what I'm working with. What do we need to do to fix it? My engineer will send us an engineered fix, running the loads and calcs to say, hey, it will still carry this span. You have to do this, this, and this, okay? So there is ways around it, guys. There is ways we can fix it. At this point, this won't pass inspection, but by the time I'm done, we'll be good to go from a county standpoint as well, okay? Digging into structural things, and I know, again, a lot of folks aren't going to ask, but they may ask, why is this member here a different color than the other stuff? So that's called a girder. That is an extremely weight-bearing member there. It's not something we can drill through, run wires through. My electricians will actually write on it, don't drill, stuff like that, just because, again, all this is engineered material. designed for this particular house and the amount of weight that is above it. And that's back to the point of why up front, having those ideas and bathrooms and electrical before we start this process is such a big help, because if this customer came in and said, I wanted to do this, this, and this, my hands are kind of tied from a county standpoint. Okay?
Also too, you guys, just from a structural side of it, of having to be weight bearing, some of the big items Troy mentioned, like if somebody wants to add a porch swing to their front porch, like that is not as easy as let's just drill it up on the ceiling and then the whole family jumps on the swing to try to start swinging. So little things like that, I mean, I'm not saying you have to ask somebody like, hey, please tell me how you're gonna decorate every single room in your house. But little things like that are kind of important to try to start figuring out when people start talking about, you know, here's what we're kind of hoping for in our house, or here's why we're moving. That's why, you know, some of those conversations are extremely important to just listen to, you know, kind of be a listening ear, let them tell you what their plans are. So when you hear things like that, you can kind of key in on it and know, okay, let's give the project manager a heads up because we are gonna need a little extra support there. Let's make sure from a drafting standpoint, we are adding girders or extra support to be able to, you know, so that way you guys are able to do those options that you're interested in doing.
Structurally, do y'all have any questions on that kind of stuff there?
Is this glue up there under, I guess, all those supports? Is that standard, or what's the reason that that's there?
It's subfloor glue. We glue it, and my framers do it from an ease standpoint. Obviously, the county checks for the glue as well. But the reason there's glue is that it gives them the ability to stick that hanger up there, and then they can nail the sides, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
It certainly helps with squeaks. I'm sure everyone has heard of floor squeaks, stuff like that. We take a lot of effort to eliminate those. And again, I'm never gonna say that your house is never gonna have floor squeaks, because I'd be lying to you, because it is. However, we try to take as many precautions as possible to avoid that. That's one of those. The type of subfloor is huge. The brand, you know, this gold here is top of the line subfloor, designed to get wet, designed to eliminate as many squeaks and cracks as we can. But that glue is obviously put down below this. Good question. Any other questions y'all have on stuff like that?
Yeah,
Yes,
hey
sir.
Troy, just when people do like walkthroughs and stuff, these pieces of wood that aren't perfect, what's a good thing to say to those people? Because they're like, you know, why couldn't they use a different piece of wood? We get that a lot too.
It's a great question, and we get asked all the time of that, and I have multiple picky folks from time to time, which again, I completely understand. It's a lot of money, a big investment. We go through, and what we've done is called a frame check. We'll take a level, go through bowed studs, which a bowed stud is anything that's not plumb, that could cause the wall to have like a wavy effect. Referencing the bark left, just remind your folks it is a natural piece of lumber. Now, there are some pieces of lumber that I would say we need to fix, you know. But to that point there, a lot of consideration is taken. Is it a structural bearing stud? Is it warped or bowed or has more bark to it than, you know, an extreme amount? Then yes, I would fix it. But just remind your folks, it is a natural piece of wood, and you know, there's no such thing as a perfectly straight member. So good question there. Yes, sir.
I noticed that obviously the water is packed, but what's this PVC? Not the drain lines, but this PVC here.
So in this particular house, we've got the laundry room up above.
Okay.
By code, when you have laundry room upstairs, your washer has to have a pan underneath it.
Ah.
So if that washing machine leaks, it hits that drain.
Drain,
exits
okay.
the house.
Gotcha.
Good question. Any other questions y'all may have on that? Okay. Cool. Well, I'm happy to continue to go into the weeds of stuff. The biggest thing, guys, is I push is the electric wall, because it's such a pivotal point to the build. Multiple things are laid out by design to just give as many folks that visual that they can have, because it is hard to look at a piece of paper and say, I think I need 5 recessed cans here, because you're not going to tell. So bring your guys out here, stand in the house, you know, feel out the space, and obviously rely on your builder. I know a lot of conversations are had with me, my electricians. what we've done on previous builds, as far as I've had folks add 3 recess cans in this room. So don't be afraid to rely on the builder. Ask questions, call us. I know Caitlin's a great resource. I'm a great resource, and I'm happy to help with those questions as much as I can.
Yeah, and I mean, like Troy said, if y'all ever have somebody that's interested in new construction, feel free to call us. If you've never been on an electrical walk and you have a new construction client, give us a call. And, you know, I don't mind if y'all want to shadow on an electrical walk that I have coming up, just to kind of hang out, follow us around, and kind of see what the most common questions are, and kind of what answers are, so that way you guys are prepared for yours when that comes up. That's something fun. Just reach out to us.
Thank you. Thank you.